Today is Wednesday, March the 9th. The hour is 9 a.m. We have two items of business today. One is the city issues and strategic planning, and the second is to discuss budgetary goals and objectives. Excuse me. So, to my fellow commissioners, is there anything or announcements of anybody that we need to put out there? If not,
I think we ought to do a moment of silence for the end of the conflict.
Thank you, sir. Item 1, city issues and strategic planning. Turn it over to our city manager, Mr. Earl Coffey. Proceed, sir.
Thank you. Florence Inc. was supposed to be here today, so we're trying to rethink kind of what we do, how we're going to organize this. So I'll talk about it in terms of what lists we have. And as I went through all of our various lists, we have a lot. And so what I want to do is kind of reformat our list a little bit to try to help us all how we view them, right? Like so that we understand what list we have. I found actually 4 that had been approved over the last few years or have been talked about. We tried to consolidate those last year, but it still seemed a little fuzzy to me. And so I want to take a minute to try to describe those, which is we have operational priorities or things that are considered in the current budget that you're looking at, right? So that might be hiring a new police officer or to improve public safety, things like that. We have priorities that you all clearly identify that are programmatic, that affect operating budgets and are reoccurring, and then you have some capital ideas that you all come up with. So we call those priorities for the commission. And then programs established by the commission, which are usually multi-year and can become operational cost, aren't necessarily operational costs annually. And some of them just may be things we do, not necessarily with cost associated with it, such as economic development, or when you all say things like, we want to improve livability, you know, that is a priority for us, and that may encompass 9 different things, right? So we're going to try to rethink. So as we go through those, we need to start thinking about how we're categorizing what we want, you know, whether we acknowledge it's going to be a direct budget impact for the year we're in, or is this going to be something we want to work on, right? Starting with the list last year, this is harder to see than I realized on my big computer screen sitting a foot from it. But what I tried to do is go through our list last year and identify the things in a different color that we did, which I know I printed in black and white because I thought we'd be reading off the screen. But we'll go through the list fairly quickly. Operationally last year, the things that impacted the FY22 budget from legislative, executive, and finance, we talked about staff development and training. We've tried to do that. We have tried to go through staff and associate them with their strengths. There's been a lot of shuffling of chairs in the building, literally and figuratively. We've tried to, and I know we'll mention this again further down the list, but we've tried to reorganize the building itself. We've flipped some of the offices, and we've tried to align functions together a little bit differently. And for example, code enforcement is, you know, the 2 code enforcement officers are sitting next to the back door now because they're not in the building a lot. So we took a utility clerk from that area and moved them inside of the utility office area, for example, so that there's a little bit more cohesion there. And then we've hired a finance director. That position, I think, starts tomorrow. And so when Lee comes on board, one of the things we'll continue to do is modernize our finance department with the new software and continuing down the idea of actually better reporting. We want to have interactive reporting so that it's more real time. That'd be, if I could describe what a city should be doing, it's that. Our finances should be transparent all the time. They should be essentially real time, right? And so that's the target for us. I know in speaking with Lee, that's her target. Will that happen overnight? No. Modernizing public access to information. We've tried to go paperless. We're trying to push all of us towards that direction. I know that I've got a copy of the packet today, but we've traditionally at a commission meeting, I try not to carry paper to it. Little things like that we try to be intentional about. For example, we have worked diligently on being intentional or being aware of information that we have and trying to push that out, either by an email or to the public through Facebook, and we've tried to do a better job with our website, and we appreciate Wilma bringing that to our attention, trying to link the two, and trying to make sure we do more consistent press releases to the newspaper, and generally speaking, just communicate outwardly to the organizations that are tied to the city that we're impacting by doing something, being intentional about that. And we will continue to do that and improve. We want to drive towards technology for staff, for HR. We've implemented Paylocity. The drive towards technology was identified last year. We've actually done Paylocity. The employees do have digital time cards now. We're paperless with all that effort. Used to, our pay stubs were a stuffed envelope that we printed.
Earl, we got all those little quirks worked out on that now?
We're really close. They met yesterday. I think by the end of the week, we'll be good on that. And, partly the problem there is just because FE is so old, our Financial Edge software, so it makes it hard for new softwares that does different things to integrate into it. But with Lee here, we'll push our software update and try to quickly implement a replacement for that.
Can you just quickly explain who Lee is?
Lee Compton is the new finance director. Yes.
Is she here yet?
She'll start tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Okay, thank you.
Employee policies, we're actually doing that now at staff meetings. We've picked a couple of sections that we started with. For example, we took the vacation sick leave approach. We just dove into that. And the idea, for example, so you'll understand what we're thinking about, it's not about how much sick time you get or vacation time. We're not trying to just say, well, we need 100 hours. What we're looking at is how can we shape our policy to incentivize employees to stay. So, for example, originally we would have 80 hours of vacation time for the first 10 years, right? So and then eventually get to 160. So can we reallocate that vacation time to where they get maybe 120 at year 5, right? And then maybe you get 160 at year 15. So then, because once you get past year 15, you really don't have time to take additional time. So 160 is probably enough. But how can we shift that to help employees see a benefit at year 5? And therefore, if what we feel like as staff is, if we can keep an employee past that year 8, then you're more likely to get them to year 12 and 14. And if you get them there, and you can have other benefits that kick in year 15, once you get an employee to year 17, 18, the chances of them finishing is very high, right? And so we're trying to shift our policies a little bit in that direction. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Did you switch to PTO, or do you still have
No,
separate sick?
You have sick time because of the retirement system,
Oh, okay.
right? So we need sick time. The vacation time, we're going to keep calling it vacation time.
Okay.
After we've got all the way through it. We're talking about doing things like annual allocation rather than accrual, right? So rather than a monthly accrual or a paycheck accrual, why not just allocate it at the beginning of the year and be done with it, right? Well, then that makes it easier for some people to take off, truly. You know, so if that's a benefit to the employee, do it. We can claw back if somebody leaves a month after they get it, you know, and have a policy that they prorate that back to the city. They don't just get it as payout. But, you know, we're looking at things like that, and we'll come back with a proposal this spring on various things. Right. And again, we're looking at organizational improvements across the board. We're still doing that. The utility admin department is created. The finance is reorganized. Code enforcement's reorganized a little bit. The PD is taking a leadership role over code enforcement. And we're gonna, and ABC, and so we'll continue to try to integrate those functions into the departments where really they more naturally fit over time. That will improve, you know, a little bit as we go. We don't, you know, you don't want to just try to dictate how things should be. We want those to naturally integrate. So the police department is, we compensation planning, recruiting, and retain are all tied to the compensation study. The next one was, we'll skip down to this. Improving dispatching services. We're working on, Rebecca's working on text to 911. What's the other acronym that she called? When I was typing that, I could not think of it, and I didn't want to call her. And it's too early for me to, and so anyway, so she's working hard. She's trying to implement new techniques and new programs, and so we see improvement there as well. Then the next sheet, we looked at the fire department. Fire department is working on some of the bullet points there were improve the involvement of staff, improve departmental organization, staffing evaluation, full-time versus part-time. We're doing or done all of those things within the department administratively, or, for example, we have converted part-time staff to full-time staff now, right? We're going through that process, and we completed that evaluation. The new truck, for example, was a bullet point item that's ordered. The problem with COVID is it's just going to be a while before we get it, and we may need to even go ahead and order the next truck, because right now the delivery time is 400 days away at minimum.
Earl, quick question, backing up to the police department.
Yep.
911. It says, do we have full staff now? And if not, how many more will we need?
We are down one, and we expect to have a hire soon, like maybe Monday.
Does that bring us where we need to be?
For what's allocated, it does. And
Do
so
we need to allocate more?
We'll look at that through the budget process.
Okay.
Right.
Same way with
The
fire department.
Yeah, so before we, and we talked a little bit about this with Randy yesterday, because he didn't, you know, all the departments have identified needs already. You know, they've identified staffing shortfalls. It'd be great. I know the chief would like to add, one officer maybe at the minimum. And so all that is what we need. But so as far as how we will budget, how we will approach that is we'll start from zero, and we'll budget for what we have, and we'll try to get to, okay, here's step 2 of the compensation plan implemented. We know that we have our costs covered. Now here's how much money extra. So how do we prioritize those staff adds and requests? And then, so that will be a step 2, right?
Thank you.
Yeah. Fire department, like I said, city code, same thing. So we're integrating that into the into the police department. Go back up to the fire department. The building next door is in May. We're looking at right now they're projecting May the 26th. We really didn't want to go too far beyond just saying that date until we started seeing the windows go in and some of the metal work go in. The doors are all on site. A couple of them are hung. I think they're beautiful. But the windows are going in on the west side, for example, this week. So we're feeling more and more confident about the delivery of that date. And so now we're going to be a little bit more finite about projecting the ribbon cutting, projecting some of those things. So, you know, we're trying to meet on that Friday, just so everyone knows that, so that we can start working on the invite list and doing those things. So we're feeling better about the May 26th date with the fire department. We are going to have, one of the things that was bulleted is medical support to citizens. So we think by Monday we'll have the medical director proposal ready. And so what we'd like to do is bring on a direct medical director for our fire staff, either by contract or part-time. We have Eric Grant stepped up and wanted to do that to support the overall mission of the community and mission of fire for public safety. And so we'll continue to look at that. Hopefully that's ready by Monday. Some of the things we still want to get going in codes that we haven't been able to fully address yet is the improvement to just the whole condemned property, recirculating that back into the market. Whether we do that with a land bank authority or whether we do that through enforcement, whatever that looks like, that process is still the thing that we've not spent time on probably that we wanted to. Public service, Josh has done a really good job with that first bullet point, the efficiency improvements and how we maintain public space. He's really trying to identify from the point of need to production or repair, whatever that is. Just trying to streamline that process a little bit. To, you know, continue to understand that it's better to be proactive rather than reactive. And so we're trying to model what we do in public works from a proactive basis. So for example, instead of waiting for the police station next door to have something break and people get tired over there of what the building looks like, what we went ahead this year and we walked through the building already. Josh is working on a list of things that we want to budget for inside of the operational department. For example, the floor in the basement is just, it's 10 years old. It's high traffic. It's yellowed in the main path, the hallway tile coming into the building. So one of the things we're going to think about doing is just taking the tile up and finishing the concrete with a nice stain and seal that will be functional, you know, and look good. Just trying to freshen up that space a little bit, right? So we'll do that, and like I said, it's your what? It's not 10, it's your 12 in the building, or going on 13, and so that the material's older than we realize, right? And it's an extremely high traffic area. So we're trying to be proactive and not reactive. So we're trying to identify things, do incremental improvements, look at things incrementally. And so that's, when we're describing efficiency, that's kind of what we're trying to do, right? The Public Works building, the design's underway. He's got a spring bid schedule that will be out, and hopefully construction can start towards the end of May. The first week or so of June is our target. We are continuing to work in the cemetery. Josh has got a preliminary design for the committal shelter pavilion for both cemeteries. He's continuing to work on that, and that will be done. We will be building those. The expansion of the cemetery at Bellevue is underway on the lot that was acquired from the school district. I know he's cleaned the fence rows up, for example, and they're doing the survey to lay out the lots, and then trying to find a final solution to the drainage in the back. We do expect that to be open 60 to 90 days, probably, something like that, depending on survey time. The park systems, so what I try to describe with that is that like a tree, sleep, creep, leap. The first year we took possession of it as a city. We began operating it. We hired a new director. The staff became organized. We added Stephanie. We've added staff now. That staff has kind of gotten settled. They've gotten their feet underneath them. They survived the first year with the turnover. And so now we want them to start making those incremental improvements. We want them to start creeping forward with how the department functions, with its responsiveness, with its programs, the things that it is doing for the community. We want it to get outside of its box, get outside of the habits of just having basketball season in the wintertime, and start to creep a little bit forward, and so that next year they kind of hit their stride and realize how far they can go. Right, so that's our vision for Parks and Rec operations and expansion, really. Program-wise, not necessarily infrastructure-wise. Then on the utility side is been extremely active. There is a utility admin department now. Staff is being trained more on the utility accounts, for example. We're going to be, now that we're doing monthly billing, which is modernize the organization of administration, we're doing monthly billing. We want to have online accounts for our customers. We want to have them to have an online portal so that they can log in and pay their bill online, that they don't have to come to the building. We want to, that's the direction we are headed, and we just want you to know that, I guess, more than anything, and it will take time, but they're working diligently to do that, to do those things. Of course, he's got the CMOM program is an organized approach to the wastewater system management, maintenance that is underway, and something that is our guidance document. He presented that at one time to you all, but we want to highlight it again as one of the successes. We did complete the sewer study, implemented those rates. This year, which should be a year for the water rate study to be updated. We'll think about that in the budget cycle and whether or not it's this spring or next fall. We'll just see what the staff time availability is with the projects right now for them. The Lebanon Road sewer expansion to the industrial park with the Megget expansion, that's putting a lot of pressure on the utility staff to meet that schedule. And also we have to think about the ARPA money that we have. We have to get those projects going. So we're trying to push a lot of projects necessarily forward on the utility side. Broadband study, we worked with the county some. We kind of hit pause there based on some information we were getting from Intercounty, who we had met with and talked about maybe a partnership with them in the county. So as we're going through that cycle, what seems apparent is that the state is so assertive in trying to get broadband to the entire state. They're trying to find, they're using the entities that they have a lot of money for broadband. Doesn't look like they want to give it to new entities. It looks like they're leaning into the idea of expanding the industry that's already there. And so we don't know how that's going to play out. So we've paused on that just a little bit to try to see what the state is going to do with their money. And really, we've not seen a final direction on some of those things. Heavy work by the utilities, things like the lead and copper rule, electrical cost, chemical cost. That's a lot of effort and energy by the subordinate staff, the superintendents, for example, at the plants and inside of the distribution and collection system. And then, of course, the utility, a big piece of what the utility does is supporting economic development. For example, we have a sewer project out at Ghost Pike to support the housing development, for example, that was approved on the bypass at Ghost Pike, the Center Estates property expansion, and then also, for example, the Lebanon Road corridor supporting Megget. So those are operationally, that really was our operational list last year, right? And I think staff, as the department heads, have done a terrific job of identifying each one of those things intuitively, with intention, and being proactive, right, in addressing the list. As I looked at the list, the operational list we did last year, everything on it by the department heads had been touched. And so what, we want to give them appreciation. One of the other things, I wanted to send an email out to you all acknowledging, I want to acknowledge IT for a minute, specifically. That is so complicated, and it's such a big animal now, and we often don't appreciate it enough, probably truly. For example, when we were riding with Addison that one night, we go to the jail, and he's printing at the jail from his car. For those people that's not in the business of IT, that looks like magic. It just happens, so we don't think about it. But there is a lot of integration and a lot of heavy lifting that IT does that nobody sees. The new building next door, there's downstairs, and I showed, the mayor got a tour of the fire station yesterday, but, in the basement of this building, we have two aisles of nothing but equipment that IT is going to have to install in the building, and nobody's going to see that, right? And you've got, 3 guys down there taking care of that, managing the Wi-Fi. I'm sitting here, I've got control of the screen, I've got my iPad on, it's connected to the internet. That looks seamless. I know Denise has hers, and everybody's starting to use their iPads more. That looks seamless, but it's not. It's work, and it's getting heavier and heavier. I just want to acknowledge that. Yep. Yep.
So we have 40 vehicles. Each one of them has a computer, like Earl says, and not just the computers, but the digital cameras and stuff that we have. It's almost take one guy just to do that for the police department, something about just that's just the patrol side. That's not the investigations that they have. The docks for those computers and all that, they integrate that, the Wi-Fi. Like Earl said, that job, daily.
Give Nick credit directly, and I acknowledge that we rarely see problems that really actually aren't a minor inconvenience. Our information is backed up. We have high security, right? He does well, and so as a staff, as a team, the IT department functions very high. I know I'm not just identifying him, because we've got 2 other guys that are one of them's in the back of the room, and so making sure the video is being recorded, right? So just want to take a minute and appreciate the impact that they have, and it is a support function, but it keeps everybody operational.
Do we need to look at beefing that department up? And
Well, I mean,
maybe
that's one of the
having-
things that we'll talk about with Nick over time, yeah.
Okay. Maybe
absolutely.
having a designated IT person for police.
Yeah,
or-
we did a little bit of that last year with on the utility side. We shifted one of the IT staff, James McClure, over to the utility, and so he's taking care of SCADA, he's taking care of all those systems over there. So yeah, there's merit to that, but we'll defer to Nick and let Nick talk through how best, because there's 2 sides of that. It's not just the labor to make sure it's done; you got to make sure it's secure.
Right.
And so you sometimes that might seem easy, but sometimes you coordinating that with a single point might be the best thing to do too. With a single team, single group, not necessarily one person, but to the chief's point, it may take a full-time employee just to do that work.
Right, that's what I'm thinking
Yeah,
for police.
right.
Maybe
Yeah.
police and 911. The other thing I wanted to say real quick was, we are currently down 1 person in IT, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is that hiring process
Yes.
ongoing? Okay.
Yep.
And if I remember correctly, Nick is planning to retire.
He didn't tell me that.
Maybe.
Did he tell you that? Is it in August? When's he going?
I hope I'm wrong too.
No, Mayor, we all are gonna retire. None of us are gonna be here forever.
I thought I heard you say that.
And so what we're trying to do is, so one of the things that we've talked about when we use the words like we want to push things down to the department heads.
Right.
You want to push them down to where they can be done. That lessens the burden of that turnover. You know, we have about 30, 35 people that are in the high end of time, right? Nick's being one of them. And so when any of those employees leave, it's going to be an impact, right? And Nick
So-
being one of them. Yeah.
Nick entered the system very young.
But what
and
we've all done,
Had a lot of years.
what Nick has done a good job in, and what we've all talked about is making sure that you have staff underneath you that's trained, that knows what they're doing, and so we want to rely on those staffs. We've tried to make good hires in that end across the board.
So this will be Nick's third move of all of our IT equipment.
No, this isn't really moving a lot. This is adding new.
I'm talking about over in the new building.
Right, it's additional equipment.
Okay.
It's not moving equipment like he's
Good.
done before. This is adding new. Right.
And I'm always a big one on third-party objective viewpoints.
Yeah.
And in today's world, particularly with what's going on, cybersecurity is always an issue. I don't care how much you think you got it buttoned up, how many firewalls you think you got. If it can be created, it can be hacked. And I know I read a statistic, you know, I talked a little bit about this, but the majority of malware issues in this country are with municipalities. And it's a big ticket. If you want out of that, you write a check. So I'm not trying to be Chicken Little here, I'm just saying, I think we really need to have a separate set of eyes come in and pick apart our system. and
He
say,
does that. He seeks outside consultation
Good.
on security and things like that.
Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe he can share that with us at some point.
Yeah, and some of the things we talk about with security, we don't talk about. Just to be honest with
Well,
you.
that makes sense. I
For
mean,
obvious reasons.
But notwithstanding, to your point as well, I wasn't trying to, but I was trying to make light of it a little bit.
Well, and again, I think we have an obligation on our side to make
Yep.
sure, just like you have an obligation on your side, some things that we don't want to know, don't need to know, and that's good. But
Yep.
at the same time,
Yep.
we need some assurance
Yep.
that says this is being actively addressed, and here's who we have brought in to address it, and this is what they have found, and this is what we're doing about it.
Yeah, so the correct approach probably for you guys is individually, when you want to come by or something, we can walk you through.
That's fine.
Some of those things.
We can do that.
We probably, that's where the gap of understanding probably has existed, is we've not spent enough. You know, I wouldn't want to make a public presentation of it, for example, but and not that it's not public information.
Right.
Or public knowledge, how we do it, or shouldn't be, but, you know, we don't want to advertise it either. And so, yeah, some of those conversations we need to have with you when you come by the building. We can give you tours of that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. So those are the operational lists. The commission identified list, what I talked about what we talked about last year and what I wrote down. Review economic development, we had that, we formed the EDA. We're developing the bylaws, and we're working on the integration or the organization of our economic development structure. The improved roadways, we got Main Street streetscape ready to go. We're working on public communication and trying to, the goal of that, of course, is after the brass band gets started. Like I said, Josh is trying to figure out the parking situation a little bit from a different tact. I think he's going to let CenterWorks guide us through their approach to solutions. And seeing how they can provide communication and improve communication between the city and the citizen who actually uses the parking, right? The better relationship with KYTC, we worked really hard on that. The East Danville Connector is, our next step for that is to make sure that it gets funded, and working through the state agencies to facilitate. The design is near complete. There is a concept of the road that the state has indicated they have. I've not seen that. I know that they've sent us some draft alignments and things like this. So it's progressing, and that's a positive. Now the next step is trying to make sure it gets funded.
Do we need to have some direct communication with our legislators?
We've done some of that. What we need to do also is, transportation should be one of those things that we talk about with a joint city-county meeting. I don't know if y'all want to have one right now or not, or wait till later in the summer. We do, on one of the sheets, we'll talk about that a little bit, but really we need to partner with the county on transportation issues that are state-funded and state initiatives.
Tip of the
really.
hat to the county, because at the time, Judge Executive McKinney basically took his list, which is given first priority by KYTC, and basically said, I want to reorder this list, and I want number one to be this north-south connector. And I appreciated that and haven't forgotten it. So, yes.
It means a lot.
Oh, yeah, it means everything.
And so the transportation plan in and around the community, really, we need to work together with the county on that. That needs to be.
I would like to have a joint meeting sooner rather than later.
Yeah. And so we'll work through that and trying to get something scheduled. There'll be some other things we can talk about here in a second.
How much longer is the legislature in session?
They've got 2 weeks of heavy lifting right now, but the funding is a little gray right now because there's such, we talked about that a little bit this morning at the EDP. They have excessive funding coming from the federal government through ARPA, for example, and other programs. And how that money gets distributed is still not known fully. There's like 3 different paths that they've described, and none of them are actually been confirmed. And so we just don't know yet. It's still gray. But we are trying to motivate those agencies that support cities and counties to lobby for projects and do those things. We've reached out to those folks and identified some of the priorities that has been established by the commission over the last couple of years, and like the East Danville Connector, like the West Danville Connector. We've tried to identify those as priorities and try to keep those out there in front of those groups, and we'll continue to do that. But meanwhile, a joint meeting will be beneficial to really talk about how we can go together and work on that. Develop and implement an approach to integrate parks. That's ongoing. Engineering's working real close with Parks now, which is good. That means that when Parks and Rec has a need, they don't have to try to figure out how to find a solution. Evan's got a good relationship with Josh, which is what we want. As he needs something repaired, then he just calls Josh. And it's extremely efficient, or he can call Rick as well. We try to make sure they have a good relationship. Of course, integration with HR and IT and other city operations. Parks has been able to successfully do that. That's the sleep year. And so they're officially part of the city. They know everybody at the city. They're coming to staff meetings. They're engaged in all what the other departments are doing. They're aware of issues that are described at staff meetings. So we're working on just that becoming that full department of the city and feeling at one with the city staff. That's how we want them to be and feel, right? Facilities, the planning's underway. We would expect soon an additional project out of Jenny Rogers. We talked some of the low-hanging fruit. Josh should do an RFP for the building for the child care side. Then, of course, we're still working on this T-ball field. That's good low-hanging fruit. It's easy to do. It's right there. Parking's already there. So we're looking at ways to do small steps on Jenny Rogers. The building's in use now with basketball, and then other activities will follow after basketball season. We would foresee a phase 1 at the fairgrounds right after the fair, It probably will include the tennis courts, the building, and the baseball field part of that. And then we'll just continue to work on the next steps as our labor allows us to.
And this really is the last year that the fair is going to be able to happen
This is
there.
the last year. We will have a project right after the fair this year at the fairgrounds.
Okay.
Right. HR department's done a really good job. Randy, can't say enough about Randy's effort and his focus on that function to support employees and support staff. Give him a lot of credit for that. Randy's very diligent, works hard, and is very considerate, extremely detailed, which is what you want an HR person to be. And so he, I think he's integrated fully into staff. He's been here a couple of years, and I think, everybody's comfortable. What we'd like to do is put the space in the basement for HR. We've talked about this a little bit before. So the mayor, he got a tour, so we showed him the space yesterday where we're trying to locate that. And any of you are welcome to come by, and we'll walk through both the fire station and that. And so we'd like to get him a kind of couple rooms down in the basement so that the employees have the privacy to come into HR. They don't have to walk by the city commission space. So if the city commission's in that room, we don't necessarily want someone feeling any pressure from just walking by if they have something personal going on. So we want to put them in the basement so that employees get a little bit of privacy from the city manager's office. And so that's ongoing, and Public Works is going to be doing that.
Can we go back to the fairgrounds for just a
Sure
second?
can.
So are we going to see that plan again and maybe officially adopt an official plan before we start anything? Because we didn't really do that.
Well, so the official plan, you can do that. At the fairgrounds, the next step will be a schematic, that's a concept.
Right, we
So
saw the
you'll
concept.
adopt the schematic plan, really, is what you will adopt.
Are we
And
gonna
so you will
have-
end up doing that at each location because they're each separate.
Do we
probably.
have some options for changes to be made if we so choose?
If you want to make changes, yeah, in the schematic phase, yeah.
Okay, well, the fair's in July, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we could look at that plan again pretty soon and make some decisions. Because it was kind of quick, and, I've looked at it on my own, but I wasn't 100% sold on that plan.
Isn't there an input questionnaire on the city's landing page?
We're doing a survey to talk about some of those things right now.
It just, I don't want to move forward. I don't want staff moving forward.
No, so the schematic phase is where you're going to detail some of those. If you want to make changes, that's when you would make it.
And, okay, so is that
Right.
kind of being set up to do that?
That is being set up. I think he's got that work order on Monday night's agenda, so that's when you'll officially start that. You'll have about a month of that, and in that month is when you'll start to dial that in a little bit.
Okay.
Right. So the concept, to repeat what has been done with that, is that some of the tenets out of your Parks and Rec master plan was identifying things you did not have in the community. And so then the next step is identifying the land that you had access to or your mutual partners, which was recommended in the plan. So the Parks and Rec master plan said to identify partners and use those partners to improve services offered to the community at a lower cost. And so then what the consultant has done is take that list of things that was not met, for example, a baseball field. We don't have a 15-year-old baseball field in the community. We don't have a multi-purpose field in the community. We don't have adequate tennis courts, for example, for the public at large. And so it was taking that list of needs and finding homes for them. The T-ball field, we knew we needed to find a home for the T-ball field. And so then, therefore, when as Jenny Rogers is made available, you you're looking at your list of unmet needs and you're saying, okay, this can go here and this works here, right? And we know that we don't have a park walkable that has actually, other than grass, things in it. So therefore, what do we program into Michael Smith so that you access a walkable part of town, which is your splash pad opportunity down there and that Trundle
Right.
education thing. So that's the effort so far. And so each one of those then will have a schematic plan that you will have to evaluate the credibility of that plan, and then you'll change that if you want to. So if you don't like the fact that splash pads proposed at Michael Smith Park and you want that somewhere else, that's where you would say that.
Okay.
Earl,
Well,
I
just
think the big,
when you talk about implementation and, when we've only seen one concept and you're already talking about implementation, I just don't want staff to get ahead of the commission.
Some of the concepts, you gotta go back to your 2018 master plan. So you gotta really, that's been approved by the commission. And so you gotta really look at that and dive into that a little bit too, to put things in context, because that has been approved already.
Maybe we make this a big commission item at a regular
Yeah.
meeting to really.
Yeah, it
or a
definitely feels
workshop
like
or
that.
whatever.
Yeah, it definitely feels like that.
We need
Right.
to talk about that again in detail before any implementation starts.
So when you're talking about a concept plan, so the concept's been thrown out there. And so now on the schematic phase, you have to do some sort of evaluation of those. So cost comparisons and things like that, that would be forthcoming so that you get to realize, well, maybe if I do this, it's going to be X, and if I do this, it's going to be Y. That stuff, that information is forthcoming.
Earl, I think that one of the biggies that happened at the last meeting was the aquatics facility, the discussion about the location of that. Let's put it out there. That's what I think we need to have some dialogue about. Because
Right.
now that it's been tossed out there, it's been dialogued on social media, so I hear it quite a bit now. So
Yeah.
that's the issue.
There's
one of the
quite a bit
issues.
of that not understood.
Yeah, sure.
Because, for example, some of that, it has been presented as if it's not even a recreational pool. And it is a recreational pool. It does have play structures in it. It does have zero depth entry. That doesn't come off well in a graphic. It's designed to have features that a 15-year-old would enjoy as well as features that a 2-year-old would enjoy, right? It does accommodate a family space because it does have these gazebo-style areas so that you can bring your entire family to one spot and you can corral them yourself. So it does have a lot of those features in it. But the key to your pool is, the key to all of your facilities is walkability. If you don't have access for kids to walk to it, it is not really conducive to young kids at home in the summertime that can actually do something. And so some of that is creating an understanding of what you're actually trying to accomplish. Now, we've heard, and we'll talk about it a little bit, the hospital, nobody wants to go to the wellness center and all that concept. Wellness center would necessarily be rebranded into something different, and it should be, if that's the solution that the commission ultimately chooses, it should be that. But you got to keep in mind, one of the other things you're doing with economic development is trying to identify infill development that is accommodating highest best use. You have a high density of multifamily homes around that part of town. They're on an island west of the bypass. There's no good pedestrian corridor across the bypass. So it makes a lot of sense to locate facilities west of the bypass so that the residents on that side of the bypass that aren't necessarily one particular demographic, you do have multiple demographics out there that have access to facilities. And so that will be an argument that will continue to be made just because it's true, right? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so you'll provide before we even start anywhere, cost comparisons?
Yeah, we're looking, yeah,
Okay.
we're doing all those things. yeah.
Long-term costs, maintenance of the
costs, right.
aquatics, because that's probably one of the most important factors.
You gotta understand what a freestanding system looks like versus partnerships, operational costs, freestanding versus partnerships. There's a reason why other communities partner with their like-minded nonprofits. The hospital is one of those entities. The reason why other communities do it is because both the city and the hospital have the same mission, right? Which is community wellness, right? So it's a traditional partnership. It's very common. And so we just have to do a good job with it, if that's what the commission chooses to do.
So, 20-some odd years ago, when Millennium was being designed, there was a space in there that was for a outdoor theater, an amphitheater. Somewhere along the process, that just conveniently got dropped.
Yep,
That needs to be a part of our community here.
it does. And so what the consultant has done, when we talk about those unmet needs, if you go back and look at the master plan or the concept plan for the fairground expansion, it was to finally find a home for that so that it's affordable. And so that is included in the plan. You could do that, and also the way the plan is it breaks it out as you can do multi-phases and individual projects if that's what you want to do, or you can do the whole thing, right? So but to Denise's point, you want to verify what you're doing. One of the things in the plan as it's presented would be space for that outdoor concert or that outdoor performance, right? So we don't want to, one of the things with on the aquatic side, when you do standalone, when you look at the parking that's required for that, you start to lose opportunities in the fairgrounds for other things that you also do not have. So what the consultant tried to do is to balance what you don't have, and trying to maximize the things that you can add to your system in the space that you have, and that's not understood either, right?
Well, I
Like
just-
legitimately, if you locate X over here, you're gonna lose what was over there, right? Whatever that is.
I know there is a sense of urgency for this, especially the aquatics facility. However, we need to get it right, and we do need to take our time. We've seen the concept one time. We've seen one concept one time. We have not seen any different scenarios at all. And I would like to see some different concepts of, well, what happens if we do it this way or that way? And so we only got one concept. And it's kind of like, for me, that's not a lot of choices. So we just need to make sure we get this right, and we need to look at it from all angles. And we need to look at different concepts of what happens if we do put the aquatics facility in the fairgrounds. What does that look like? What is the cost for that? And we need to weigh all of that. And it concerns me that staff is already talking about implementation in July when the commission has only seen one concept one time. So that is concerning to me. And I'm just trying to make sure we get it right and that staff and anyone else does not get ahead of the commission, because ultimately this is our decision and it's on us, and we have to do what's best for the community.
Right, so it's not being driven by staff, it's being driven by your consultants ultimately, who is taking input from the community through the original 2018 plan and designing a concept for that. It's not a staff, it's not a wish list of staff, and it's not, and I want to make sure that's understood. It's not this wish list of staff. That's not what it is.
No,
Right.
I understand that, but.
And I did hear that with, Evan having played baseball, I did hear one of the comments, well, we just wanted to make sure we get a big giant baseball field. We don't have a baseball field, for example, right? So it's not a staff wish list thing, right? It is recommendations from a third party looking at the community overall. But to your point, that's the schematic phase, and that's coming.
But
Yeah.
the words implementation after the fair,
Right.
that's the plan.
That is
And-
staff's goal, yeah. Well, no, but to your point, what I'm saying is you're gonna be having to make decisions between now and then in order for us to do that, right? You're gonna have to allocate money, you're gonna have to approve a schematic plan. There's multiple steps coming. What we did was we have a starting point, right?
Okay. Okay, so they'll provide like JH,
Absolutely, yeah.
what this might look like, or the pool at different locations.
You'll get different locations for
Different
that.
costs.
And you'll understand
Okay.
the difference in cost, yeah,
In the next few months.
in the next month, I would suggest.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
In order for us to implement, we have to make decisions quickly, right? Like, we have to, continue down that path. And so the schematic phase will try to address the questions that you have. Yeah,
And thanks for reaching out to the community, and a lot of people have appreciated that.
yeah. So then you've got to keep in mind that 2018 plan, so how you, if you ask the question, which is why you need to do the math, which is why you want to get it, if you ask the question rhetorically, do you want to pool, everybody's going to say yes. If you want to pool, and if you ask this question, do you want a project that costs $8 to $10 million, or do you want a project that costs 4 to 5? People are going to say, well, we want the cheaper project typically. So, but then if you've not given them information, they may not like the cheaper project. They may prefer the more expensive option, right? Or they may, so you've got to really make sure that you're asking the right questions. Keep in mind the 2018 plan, we reached out to every, you had, I forget what the total number of respondents was, but it was in the multiple thousand, where we sent surveys. We did an online survey home to kids at every school in the community. There was a significant amount of public outreach done that is driving the consultants' recommendations to you now, right? Like the surveys that were done in 2018 are not invalid in and of themselves, because they were significant and substantial, right? So the question I have is just, do we duplicate that level of service too? Trying to find out and identify when we've already done it, right? So we have to rely on the information that we garnered before a little bit, right? We can't just vacate that because, it's not then, it's now. So anyway, yeah, you'll come back. You'll get those choices. I know it seems gray, but it's not. I mean, you'll get schematic options, and you'll get cost information, and you'll make that final decision. Like I said, soon. The transportation needs, for example, walkability, streetscape. The transportation chapter in the comp plan, we have started looking at that. We need to continue to look at that. The downtown master plan, there was a couple of transportation things that Josh is working on. For example, the Church Street extension. We've talked about that before. He's trying to hire a consultant. We've done some survey work for the property. Then just raising overall citizen awareness. That's one of the things that we just have to be intentional about as a city. Otherwise, we lose credibility for what we do. The pool is a perfect example of that. Not knowing, like I said, how you communicate, can steer answers, and we don't want that. We want the best decision we can get. We want the best feedback we can get, and we need to understand why we're making, what's our decision drivers when we do things, not just a gut instinct, right? Then some of the program things that the commission picked as a priority list last year was for example, the downtown master plan. We just talked about one of the transportation projects tied to that. We're looking at, schedule-wise, we're looking towards the completion of the fire station to have something happen to the property across the street. And so in our minds, that May timeframe is when effort will need to start to show up across the street with something, right? And that includes demolition potentially, that includes property acquisition, it includes property potential sales of that parcel. And so including incentives downtown with a potential TIF district discussion happening in the next month or two. All those things are starting to formulate now that we see an end to the fire station life, right? And so those are going to be those are going to be time consuming and will occupy a lot of thought for staff and also the commission as we go forward. Economic development, livability, of course, the streetscape, Parks and Rec master plan, which we just spent time on. Implementation of that, not just, we want to do something. We don't just want to keep talking about it. We want to implement the recommendations out of the 2018 master plan. We want to do a good job with that, right? We don't want to just sit there on a plan that we don't do anything with. On the economic development side, again, the EDA is continuing to organize. It's going to have bylaws. It's got to develop a mission statement and a strategic plan for itself. The economic development, we want to improve our processes within the community. We want to work with our partners to do that. And all of that effort is underway now. Staffing, we have done a good job with implementing the first phase of the compensation package. The second phase will be proposed in this budget first as a priority. We want to continue to recruit and retain and do a good job with staffing also. So we feel good that then with the utility projects, the way we've previously described those, that the program things that the commission identified, we feel like that we've made progress on all of those, right? I didn't create any of these lists today so far. These were lists that we literally used last time, and what I wanted to do is just highlight the effort towards each thing on the list for a minute. Now, the next page is kind of the things that we saw as staff that bubbled up as the work that we saw forthcoming, or the things that we saw that would occupy the commission's time. Planning and zoning, we know that we got the comp plan scheduled for this year, so comp plan update and renewal. So we are looking at a KLC proposal to guide that process for the EDP has asked the city and the county to totally update the comp plan, totally modernize the comp plan. KLC's process that they've proposed to us does that for the city. So we'll need to sit down maybe at a joint meeting and talk about the county, whether they want to do it also. So what we saw in some counties around us, the cities and counties went ahead and did that together this cycle. There's a lot of emphasis with the demand for housing, with the demand for economic activity, that communities are necessarily having to really spend a lot of energy on the comp plans that are where those comp plans exist. And we're seeing no different. The pressure on us is the same here. You can see it on every zone change that is occurring. So the recommendation to go, the request being driven through, or the request that came from the EDP to update the comp plan, we've got to decide if that's the path.
What's the timetable on that, Earl?
Kelsey's proposal is in hand, so we'll bring that forward and talk. If we want to try to bring and you know, we could bring that on Monday's agenda if you all want to. And, you know, the question I was gonna have today is whether or not you wanna have a joint meeting and talk about that first at a joint meeting, or do you want to authorize KLC on our side to continue? So remember, we asked last year, do you all want KLC to guide the public input phase? And so now, in conversations since then, this is when KLC was going to come back. So they came back, like they said, in February. They met with us. They gave us a proposal to do the entire comp plan, basically. So then, the question then is, to the commission is do you all want to do that to partner with the county on that? You all want to have a joint meeting and talk about that with the county? Or what does that look like? Do you want to just update the city portion? Go ahead.
I'd rather do it with the county, but
Yeah.
we need to be prepared to do it without them as well. You know, depending on what comes up.
So-
And maybe add to that joint meeting the transportation issues.
Yeah, and
And getting all of us together is tough, so you may as well get as much done as you can.
What
Yeah,
about
we-
we could talk about those two things in one meeting, and it wouldn't be,
it would occupy a whole meeting, in my opinion.
well, it would, but it wouldn't be terribly long, you know, and grueling for us to talk about those two things at one meeting.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's hard to get us all together, so I would rather talk about two big things at once, you know, one time, and then maybe then, when we do get that joint meeting, maybe then we could schedule another one in, you know, 3 to 6 months and follow up.
Earl, did you contact Mayor Wilkerson in Frankfurt as to the people they hired to update, redo their comp plan? They were out of Cincinnati. I just wonder why they didn't choose KLC.
I don't know, I can answer that. I know that KLC does it all over the place, and they have highly skilled staff, and they have a successful process. So I don't know why you would not use KLC, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
I think that's worth investigating, because again, this
Yeah.
is one of these things, like, you need to get it right, and because we know what happens when you don't. And as you said, and I totally agree, it's time we brought in some professional people that can plan for this community instead of react for this community. So I would encourage communication with Mayor Wilkinson and ask him. They may have gone through a RFP process.
It could have been a situation where in order to get
Could have been timing
the
issue.
partnership
Yeah.
to work for them, they had to get a third party. So if it's KLC, if it's just the city, I couldn't imagine why you would not use KLC. If you do the city and county, the county has to acknowledge that KLC is doing it to support. Now, the KLC's done multiple counties. They have a long list of counties where they've completed the comp plans inside of, including cities. And from northern Kentucky, big cities, big counties, large populated counties in northern Kentucky to rural counties in western Kentucky, right? KLC has the experience capacity to do it. And so long as everybody agrees that that's who you want to use.
And I don't think we utilize KLC enough, so I would love to utilize them for this.
I'd love to make
Yeah.
sure that they've got the highest proficiency of staff for our budget.
Yeah.
You know, and a comparison doesn't hurt.
Well, and so by comparison then, the county, you got to think, what's the county willing to spend too, not just the city? And so KLC's proposal, I'll go ahead and tell you, the city portion of the comp plan is 30,000. And so then what they agreed to is they would do the county, they would include the county also for an additional 30,000. The plan that is in Frankfurt, I want to say is $250,000 apiece to get a third party to
yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
And so to me, I would.
Is that confirmed?
In the newspaper article that I read that described the contract, the county was approving their half, which was that number.
Half of 250.
No, their half being 250.
Yeah.
So their total investment is somewhere between 450 and 550,000. And I just don't know that you need that when you have someone like KLC that has done it successfully in so many other
Because
cities.
one of the things I've always heard about Bluegrass Ad is that you can tell any comp plan that Bluegrass Ad ever did.
This
because
is not
there's such a
Bluegrass
homogeneous
Ad, though.
nature to it.
yeah, this is not the bluegrass ad doing your comp plan.
I understand that. I'm saying that that has been an analogy that's been shared with me over the years, that you can spot a bluegrass plan a mile away because they're all pretty homogeneous. And that may be okay in this situation as far as a cookie cutter approach. I'm not suggesting KLC would do that. I'm strongly suggesting that we get one pass at this. Let's make sure we do it right. And it's one of those deals that, in the context of proper planning for this community, what is $500,000? We're gonna spend a heck of a lot more than that on the pool.
Well, things like the transportation chapter, for example, you're going to use your transportation consultant that Josh is doing an RFP for right now to augment that work a little bit. But, you know,
But KLC will coordinate that, right?
I don't have the same feeling I get with KLC that I do with, KLC is a large organization that's well-funded.
I have a
and
lot
that-
of confidence in them. I mean, I
Yeah.
work with them, and
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we're doing our due diligence we do everything else that way. We do RFPs, RFQs, we get proposals. Why would we not do that here?
Yeah, when we had looked at it years ago, it was 350,000 for here. And towns about 3 times our size or double, it was $1 million
That's crazy.
for just a comp plan. And it was therefore done in-house. Yeah.
The big, and that's been our shortcoming. So this is a balance between in-house and paying them, you know, $300,000 or $400,000. The big thing on the comp plan is not necessarily who does it, and not necessarily having people tell you how land should be used. The comp plan is about buy-in of the community. And so a big piece of the comp plan is gathering the public input so that the community agrees up front that this is where industrial development's going to occur, and this is where commercial development is going to occur, and this is where high-density housing is going to occur, or low-density housing is going to occur, so that as those zone changes come forth, there's not a lot of conflict in it, right? Like, generally speaking, the public has already agreed to. So KLC's process is very centered around public input, and that means that the city commission and the county fiscal court and planning and zoning staff doesn't talk. That means we sit in the back of the room and receive that public input. And what you don't want to have happen is you try to control that. You want to let your public communicate what you want in the comp plan.
You don't want that to get skewed in any way.
You don't want to get that skewed because it's a true community document, right? But to your point, Mayor, we'll look into that a little bit and see if there's an alternative that is not that level of investment that.
It's all about due diligence as far as I'm concerned. It's all
Yeah.
about being able to justify. And to Commissioner Holland's input, which I find, you were there, you know, how can a firm justify that kind of cost when you've got, when doggone every city in this state is a member of KLC? How can you justify $350,000 as a private entity? That's how they make their living. How can they make their living doing that when you can get this other service for significantly less?
A lot of times, communities just bail all the way out and do it in-house, and that's what we've always done, right?
Oh, I understand that. But again, that goes back to my point. If I'm out there scraping for business and what I offer is expertise in comprehensive planning issues, and I throw out a $350,000 number, somebody's gonna sit there and say, you need to justify that big time, because everybody else, your competition is either in-house or KLC or KCO. I don't know how a firm can stay in business doing that.
It's all about graphics too and presentation. A lot of what they're gonna offer is they're gonna do mapping, they're gonna try to do improved, communication on when it's published. They'll try to do a little bit more detailed work on that end, which if you do a good job in your general mapping and then using the ad to support your mapping side, so you'll have some cost tied to, so your text and a lot of your mapping would come from KLC. You're gonna get some support from the utility side, from the utility team, fruit teams, by the time you count the other agencies. And there will be some cost on the backside for those entities probably, but that's gonna be there for an outside consultant either way. But then on your mapping side, you can use the JAS department from the ad to do your mapping, and that saves you a fortune. That's where your savings, the big step down is not just using KLC versus them, it's using the available resources to offset that broad cost. So what people, the reason it rolls up and becomes a large project is because they're trying to take all of those resources rather than having to shepherd all of those resources. They're trying to funnel them into one organization. They do all that in-house, right? So then therefore that cost is bigger. You know, you're just going to one point, one contact, one phone call. So what will have to happen is you'll have to have city staff will have to coordinate mapping on behalf of KLC, right? So that will be a labor step that other communities won't do, right?
And that brings me to another point.
That saves you money, but
Yeah, but you guys are already cheesecloth thin. I mean, you guys got things from, the menu continues to grow of things that need to get done. And you guys can only do so much during the day, during the week. And I'm not against KLC, please don't misunderstand.
No, I know
This is about
that.
due
I know that.
diligence. It's kinda like Commissioner Terry said, we're gonna dig a hole for a pool, it better be the right place.
correct.
Cause you're not
Correct.
gonna change it after you put it in there.
No, that's correct. And so, you know, I'm just trying to verbalize it. I'm trying to
Yeah, I
just
got it.
talk through it. I'm not trying to,
Yeah, and those two prices actually included the zoning ordinance also.
yeah.
But, yeah, otherwise it
Yeah,
was
well, the
hundreds of
zoning ord- yeah.
thousands still for the comp plan.
The zoning ordinance is included in the one in Frankfurt too, in that cost.
So we will have a joint meeting first, like
Well,
Commissioner Terry and
if y'all
the
want to
mayor.
schedule that, yeah, we will.
I think it's
I
a good
I just
idea.
wanted to make
Important.
sure.
I think it's a good idea.
Well,
It's
it's gonna,
community
you know,
document.
we're kind of like herding cats, and
Yeah.
it's gonna take a while to get a date that will work, that everyone can get there. So if you'll start working on that, I think that would do all of us some justice there.
Yeah, we've been trying to work towards that a little bit, but yeah, we'll do that. It makes a lot of sense to me. Then livability, when you go on down past planning and zoning, downtown master plan, livability, we see that as, so Mayor, this list is really going to be the focus of staff over the next year, right? Livability, the streetscape, Parks and Rec, we need to implement. In order to implement, you're going to have to get started. We'd like to see a project in both of those places. In order to stay on a path and keep pushing us forward. Economic development, again, your EDA's got to complete its bylaws and then develop its strategic plan. Reform economic development structure, incentivizing. We've not really done a lot with the incentives directly yet. We have been waiting on this TIF concept and then trying to build everything after you build your TIF. Truthfully, there's an argument to be made that I heard that was interesting on incentives. That was at the Kentucky City Managers Association when you got Paducah and Owensboro, Covington to Pikeville. When you get everybody together, what you hear is this: our incentives just chasing everybody to the bottom. And it's hard to see that when you're in Danville and you're competing, you're trying to recruit people to Danville. But the folks in Northern Kentucky had the most interesting argument in that their position is that they're so closely packed that you don't have to move very far to change a city, to move to another city. And so what they're seeing is that companies are moving their headquarters a mile into another city, and then another year, 2 years later, they'll move them a mile into another city. And they're just chasing the incentives offered by those communities down into the ground to zero, right? So that then it's rendering some of these communities in Northern Kentucky where their adjacencies, basically their operating revenues being driven down by incentives to the point where they are being distracted by trying to recruit jobs, so they're so busy trying to recruit industry and jobs that they're actually failing at sustaining their revenue, right? When one of the interesting things is that City A and City B in Northern Kentucky, one of them was, there was this outward publication that they were recruiting a medical center. That was this new 300-bed medical company. And well, and when City B went to the meeting of City A, and what they found out is that they already have one empty in their city, a mile and a half from where they were talking about building another one. And so these cities there had to acknowledge they have to start working together better. And so as we're thinking about incentives, we want to be careful about that. We want to be thoughtful about that, is my takeaway from
What's
that
your
conversation.
timeline on that program? do you
The
think?
TIF program, we would like to start talking about the TIF inside of the next 60 days, 30 to 60
Who
days.
can we access that can give us some broad viewpoints on what types of incentives are out there, different communities are using, and what kind of success or failure have they had?
When we did the Economic Development Symposium last August, we brought in Commonwealth Economics, who we've worked with a lot. We've talked to a couple of others. What that company's position is that the most sustainable incentive is your TIF program. And so we're working with them, and also we're working with council that sets up things like that, Jim Parsons. So that will be forthcoming. That will be a conversation we'll have. We'll talk about the TIF first, and then try to focus on there's a whole separate housing conversation. The housing group the Housing Task Force is doing a housing study, trying to understand what that market is. There's several different ideas out there, but as I'm sitting here thinking about them, I'm trying to think a time frame on each one of them. Your housing probably waiting on information for them to even start to talk about incentives is probably 30 days away at best. And so you're looking at really starting to have conversations around all those ancillary things probably in 90 days. But the TIF district concept, do we want to do one? You could do one on the bypass. I know we're meeting later this week to talk about that with one of the large property owners on the bypass, and whether or not you do one of those. You can do a commercial one, you can do one downtown. So how do you incentivize growth? So we're looking at that. That's ongoing. And like I said, you'll probably have concepts presented to you probably 30 to 60 days, and we'll see what that looks like.
So one of the incentives, just throwing out an idea, is we talk about making our community attractive for people who come in here in the industry, providing them certain services. Well, there's certain services that don't exist here that used to. I'll give you one that goes great guns on Broadway in Frankfurt, and that is a leather repair shop, shoe leather repair shop. Mm-hmm. He's got all he can say grace over. You know why? He's the only game in town. That is a craft that is pretty much long lost. But is it a needed craft for this community? I don't know. But if it is, how do you get somebody here? I'll give you another one. We used to have 2 independently owned dry cleaners here. We don't have any independently owned dry cleaners here. The one that is here now used to be owned by individuals out of Springfield. It's now corporately owned I say corporately owned, let me back up on that. Just say it's owned by an entity in Lexington. Well, guess what? There's no delivery, there's no pickup, there's no Saturday office staff. It's 2 people. We've gone from an entity that used to house over 30 employees down to 2. Less services, less employees. Is that something that needs to be addressed? I don't know. It may be just say, you know what, that's the marketplace.
Well, I think we have not done a good job of recruiting small businesses. The focus has always been on industry. and the conversation has always been about industry. And if you think back to the Economic Development Symposium we had, I believe the guy was from Madisonville. The first thing he said was, do not discount your small business recruitment, because that is, I think he said 35 to 50 employees a year, potentially. And if you have that many, that's, 50 employees, that's a half of a factory. Could be.
Not to belabor the point, because I know we need to get on, but to Commissioner Terry's point, we give significant tax incentives for industries that come in here. What makes it different from a small business? I don't know.
Well, and down there, so the economic development staffing, right below that, you have community liaison position. We're going to try to propose that this spring, and so that by July, if we're going to cook that into the budget, then we would like to go ahead and start thinking about advertising that. So we'll talk about that with you again sooner. That's one of those positions that you want to promote those, facilitate and work with small business, the small business market. One of the things we felt at from a structural standpoint is business expansion and retention, BRE. We've not had programmatically, we have invested a lot of money in recruiting a large industry, a new industry. And the BRE side has really fallen down to folks like the utility director to have a relationship with, for example, Meggitt, to, what do we do to support that expansion, right? And so what we have to do is really, from the small business and, that small IT business to the dry goods to the leather repair shop, we really have to figure out how to, dive into that market growth a little bit. I don't know how else to describe that. And so having someone that can focus on that internally for the city is important.
And that also, in my opinion, falls under the EDA, and we really need the EDA to get organized and get their feet under them and possibly have some staff.
Small business, what you'll see in other places, globally, what you'll see is that the city and chamber work together on small business. Mm-hmm. Small business, so our chamber, one of the things that we have to do, the chamber is in other places, is a very strong forum for small business to reach out to for support and help and guidance, right? And what the city, most cities have a stronger relationship. We know the chamber here, but we need to improve that relationship another level, improve function of both the chamber and the city together in recruiting small business. Most people run that program through the chamber and really lean into the relationship between the chamber and the city to promote those small business. So, we are trying to figure that out, I guess, for lack of a better description.
We need to have a straight-up conversation with the chamber.
Well, we know we need staff, and so that's why to do that aspect of it. If we're going to maintain those relationships as a city, if we're going to work on those as a city, that community liaison position does that, provides communication outwardly. That's really your public communicator outwardly. I don't know, public relations position, but it's really, don't want to be exclusively that. I mean, you want it to be able to do many things. So you want to embed your public relations inside of an economic development position type person rather than trying to
And
have
I think,
another person on your staff.
I think along with that, we need to, again, look at a grant writing position. Nicholasville just hired one, and I've been told they've gotten a lot of money through having a dedicated grant writer. It's just a thought.
I would echo that. I think I've echoed that sentiment now for about 2 or 3 years out of 7. And I kept getting the pushback, well, you first need to identify what you want a grant writer for. that is not how we got the trails, I don't believe. I could be wrong. I think it was an issue of where the Convention and Visitors Bureau person at the time said, hey, do you realize that there's a menu out of the Transportation Department for all these different things? You don't know what you don't know. Bring us a menu of what all is out there, and let's begin to identify, you know what, we could really use that. Or, hey, maybe we can get some of those funds to help with the aquatic center.
Yeah.
Again, we don't know what we don't know.
And writing grants is not easy. And our staff, trying to write their own grants and maintain and manage and a lot of times the grant includes the salary for the grant writer. So I think we need to take a hard look at that again.
And there are people in this community that are certified grant writers.
Mm-hmm. You can do it on a contract basis.
Sure. And I would suggest you do it on a contract basis.
I don't know what that position looks like in Nicholasville, but I can find out. I just happened to have a conversation last week with a former employee over there.
Yeah, I've heard of, we've been successful here with grants. Land and water grants are what was talked about with the trails. We've gotten a lot of environmental grants. We've got the $200,000 EPA grant with the brownfields right now that we got last year. Again, you got to have a need, otherwise your grant application is not going to be successful.
You don't know what you don't know.
The fire department, just this year alone's gotten multiple thousands of dollars in grant money. It just, but I don't disagree with you, Mayor, and it's trying to find a balance. I mean, so we'll.
Contract it out. It
Yeah.
doesn't come off of the city's, out of the city's budget. And let's tell them what our needs are. Let's give them all this and say, hey, what can you find here?
Yep.
Well, our immediate need is a Parks and Rec facilities, and I just, you can't convince me that there's not a lot of money out there for it.
Well, there's a lot of small things. So you'll have a grant application, I think, on Monday's agenda, if Josh has gotten there, for the T-ball facility, for example, in partnership with the Kendall and Friends Foundation, right? So there's a lot of opportunities out there. Yeah, I mean, I understand.
It's just taking a lot of staff time that could be better utilized, I think, because our staff, like, as the mayor says, is razor thin
Yeah.
anyway, and if that's one more thing that we can make more efficient, then it just makes sense.
It's kind of like having a PR person that doesn't know the subject. A lot of times, it actually becomes more of a burden on staff
It is.
to ask, to have to support somebody else than just do the application out of that department, right? And I know that seems counterintuitive, but that does happen.
What about part-time here?
Do what now?
You don't have to pay benefits. What about someone part-time?
Part-time probably would be better than just a contract,
However you want to do it, let's get somebody.
yeah.
And I can give you a few names. Like at the hospital, they did so many different services with two grant writers.
School systems have dedicated grant writers. And a lot of times, like I said, the grant includes the salary of the
Yep.
compensation for the grant writer. And it comes, it's part of the grant. And I think.
A lot of schools are eligible for things that cities are not eligible for, though.
Right,
that
but the
require
point
those
is, if
things.
it's, bigger grants that we can utilize better, then it's worth it.
Let me say this, because thankfully, this is my last budget process. We have been in a transitionary state, maybe without making that comment. We have gone from, physically, we have gone from a large town to a small city.
Yep.
We, in this building and we as a city and city staff also need to begin to make that transition where we talk about things like this, where we talk about thinking bigger picture, where we talk about, you know what, maybe we can do it cheaper in-house, but is it better? That's the kind of thing that I hope you will continue to expand and develop as you move this community forward. Because you can't do it all.
Yeah,
That's a recipe for a mess.
right, and I don't think, I think that's a little misconstrued too, because we don't, you know, the department heads, you know, just out of this seat, can't do it. And, you know, we don't try to do it.
Right.
Right, like, that's just totally
No, you
misunderstood. But,
reorganize nicely, but still.
But-
Everybody's got certain bandwidth.
yeah, and I'm trying to just think about, you know, I'm verbalizing that, we're really thinking out loud is what we're doing, and that's okay. And, you know, I'm just trying to think about all the programs that we see where that would be an advantage, and, you know, we'll look into it. There may be a time for it. A lot of the money that the city needs is bigger money out of the state. And that's, a grant writer is not gonna help you with that. A lot of the small stuff, we generally have covered with the within the departments already. But there's a balance, like you're saying, like we're seeing with the T-ball field, for example, you know, that could be a significant grant. That
Why don't
is.
we do this? Why don't
Yeah.
we, through Commissioner Holland's input, why don't we talk to one or two folks and say, here's a menu of things that we are addressing.
Yeah.
Are there some things out there that you can assist us with in securing federal dollars? Let's get some idea of, hey, there is a big world out there that we need to get into, or it may be marginal at best.
Yeah, no, we'll do that, we'll for sure do that, I'm just trying to think through it out loud while we're here together. Yeah, we'll for sure talk to somebody and we'll investigate it, I mean, that's what our job is.
Okay. And
I'm just
Denise
trying
will
to
get
think
those
about what-
names. Denise, you'll get those names too.
I don't
Well,
have any names
The next
specifically.
person.
Well, I can talk, yeah, I
they
can
do.
ask the Nicholasville person
Well,
how it works for them.
I reached out to their city clerk. She's gonna send me a job description.
Yeah, that's what I was
for
gonna say.
what
Can
they
we
have.
just post
You know,
it and
here's the
see
key
what
question.
happens?
Why did Nicholasville see a need for this?
Well,
What
a
was
lot,
their thinking?
a lot of times when you go look at it, it's just an idea somebody has that the perception is that there's just grant money flowing all over the place. And a lot of times, once you get into it, it's not the case. And so, you know, we have had success getting grant dollars into this community through the methodologies we've used. We've gotten, you know, hundreds of $1,000s in playground equipment. We've gotten
No doubt. But
trail
Right,
construction.
right.
We've done all those things. The question, you used the word better is probably the correct phrase. And that's what, you know, we owe it to the community to look at, right? And that's what we'll do. I'm just, you know, like I said, trying to verbalize it.
And that person can vet though. You know,
Oh,
if-
absolutely,
If they
yeah.
see something that it's not worth applying for, then move on.
Right.
And, you know, instead of going through the process and applying for something that
You know you're not gonna get.
somebody didn't realize that we were never gonna get, or, you know, get to the end of it and go, oh, well, you know, we can't get that after all. So
Yeah. Mr.
it's just
Coffey?
more efficient.
Yep,
You had in your staffing, A&A community liaison position.
Yes.
And we've gone from that to grant writing, I think, for two separate things, they're both important. Were you suggesting that the community liaison position be a full-time position or a part-time position?
full-time.
Full-time? Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. And I think you've heard enough from my counterparts here to consider doing something in this budget cycle about a grant writer, because we talk about it, but ends up never getting on the budget.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll definitely look into it. Then, the next question is just what do you all see? I mean, so these are sentences and phrases we've had on lists that were staff-driven, that were you all-driven comments at meetings like this. And so this FY '23 priority list is just things that we peel off of all these other lists that we know is moving forward, we can, or have a need for, we know we're looking at the complaint,
I have
all
a
of
question.
grant writer, but what do you all see?
I see a trip to the restroom.
Go ahead.
That may not be everybody here. Can we take some?
You
Oh, yeah,
certainly can.
Lord, yeah.
Some people, some people. Jay? now reconvened, and I believe we were into just questions.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't know how else to say it other than just. What do you guys, I mean,
I have a question. It's kind of a future question, but it's kind of a present question. I'm sorry the chief just left, but there is a bill in Frankfurt that is going to allow cities to get into the EMS business. Personally, I hope we don't do that. And I'd like to put a stake in the ground now that says, that's a county function.
yep.
Let it continue to be a county function. That's just, you may know more about that.
No, the only thing that, where the lines get blurred is just in terms of the first responders, the first person there.
Right.
Needs to be able to help. So the idea of a medical director on our fire staff, the idea of enhancing 911 for medical dispatch, the
Yep.
idea of supporting that industry with care, or the citizens with care.
Right.
From our staff is critical. It's critical to, but we don't have to have an ambulance. And we don't have to, that's a program, it should be administered through the county because it's just more efficient. You know, that's a big wide berth, the entire county is compared to just the city. But where we can lean into their staff and help prepare a scene for their staff when they get there, we need to do.
But as
In my opinion.
support, possibly in the new fire station, we could have a place for
As an
the
example,
ambulance.
yes, absolutely, that's a
Yeah.
good example,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Expensive adventure, isn't it?
Yeah, it can be, for sure.
But in my notes, I think we've said we wanted to have a joint workshop, city county, on a couple of different topics. And I think we also are looking for a separate workshop on aquatics and
Yeah, that's,
Expansion.
yeah, the Hope Parks process, that's just that's part of the planning process that's coming on it. I got,
Can we identify the topics for the city-county meeting? We keep saying 2 or 3 topics.
planning and zoning and transportation.
Planning and zoning.
Then
right
the
now.
parks might be a separate meeting.
yes.
Yeah.
Parks and Rec.
Everyone may forget that the county is still our partner in Parks and Rec.
Well, and you have, you know, they have a need for land at a couple different things where the city has land. There's things to talk about with them separate from those two subjects. I would argue that those two subjects may take
Whole
a
week.
meeting long enough
Whole weeks.
to, yeah.
Earl,
Sir?
one of the things that has been a challenge, and perhaps I might even take the liberty to speak on my fellow commissioners, is, you know, we do all this, we load up our menu, and then it kind of just goes into the dark, and you get done what you can get done, some other things carry over. Is there a way that we can, at least once a quarter, let's create a menu and have some that are first-tier priorities, some that are second-tier priorities, some that are third-tier priorities, and allow the commission to really understand, here's what we're getting done, here's what's getting moved out. Hey, we just got this one in C done, that was a quickie, that got done. But allows the commission to really monitor our direction, our activities, our progress.
We've tried to do that using staff updates. And so for example, it's easy to point to utilities because it's so project-based. But I mean, when he provides you an update, he's giving you a project update on everything that's on your list. So what you're seeing is when fire department comes in and gives you an update on the quarter, they're communicating what they're doing on your list. But really, we're doing that, but really what we need to do is totalize it into a single point so that you all have that to reflect on. And so to your point, you've asked for a Gantt chart and things like that before, because that's the level of communication you really would help you stay on track as a commission, not just see those details at a quarterly
Right.
basis at a city commission meeting, yeah. And so that's one of the goals I had, was try to figure that out and try to see what that looks like. I've been trying to conceive of what we can do that, because there are so many loose ends
Right.
that are all accounted for as evidenced by the list, but it's just hard to understand where you're at in a given time. And we definitely concede that communication's the challenge. And as Ms. Brown has pointed out to us, you know, multiple times, communication's a challenge. And so we got to figure that
Is that
out.
true, Wilma? Are there any other questions?
Mine's not a question, but I know because of COVID, we've gotten away from the community agencies coming up and doing a report once a year, semi-annually, whatever. It'd be nice to get back to having some of those community agencies report to us, because again, from their reports, it gives us another chance to communicate to the public things that we're doing. We're accomplishing it through those agencies, but really we're financing and doing it, so.
Commissioner
Yeah.
Atkins, are you suggesting that be at budget time or systematically throughout the year?
No, I'm saying systematically throughout the year, because at budget times, all they want to talk about is how much money can they get.
Well, and it's not just
Progress.
those, it's not just those agencies. Ashley and I talked about it recently, about making sure that I know the Heart wants to be on the meeting for the 28th, and I was trying to get to your email, Commissioner Holland, but they're going to be presenting to you in 3 weeks after that. And so it's going to be a regurgitation of what they would have presented
So
on
let
the
me offer
28th.
an add-on, if I
So-
may, Commissioner Atkins, is that if you do this systematically throughout the year, do you need that dog and pony show at budget time?
Well, probably not, but what I was getting ready to say was, there's other, like Section 8 Housing is a board that you've
Yeah,
established.
Yeah.
So why aren't they coming and giving an update? Who is overseeing the board that you've
It's not
established?
just
Or is that
about
just?
who we fund. It's
In
about
my notes,
who's
if
under us.
I be
Yeah.
allowed to complete it, or finish my comment, in my report, my notes, I put down community agencies, I also put down boards, and also put down groups. We support different groups that are really not boards or agencies. So it'd be neat to get all of them. And Ashley has done a great job in getting that organized for us. We stopped letting people come in because of,
Yeah, we've not pushed that.
Well, the
because of
county,
COVID.
when they award their allocations, they send a letter and says, this is how much we're giving you, and this is when you need to come back and talk to us in the meantime.
Yeah.
So I think if we did that at budget, with those entities that we will fund, but we also need to go through the boards and committees and have them come back at least, mid-year. At some point, we can rotate it and give us some updates, because we don't know what's going on out there, really.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So, for me, that's one of the things that we want to make sure that we take a step forward on, for sure.
And maybe the high dollar, groups, would you want to hear quarterly? Like senior center, or twice a year, senior center, or airport board, P&Z, those that get a little bit more money? I don't know. Or just take
Makes
from
sense.
everybody?
Makes sense.
Okay.
I want to thank you for this. I think this has been different and very informative.
Well, I mean, when you look at the picture, what do you all see? You're looking at the city. Take 5 more minutes and just, we know that we've got to do a good job with our comprehensive plan. We know that we've got infrastructure growth happening. We know that we have to figure out a way to promote infill development. We know, right, like we know there's some transportation needs. We've talked about those. We know that we have to distribute our access to on the map, nothing south of Clark's Run has any park anywhere other than the little Butler Drive Park. So we know we need to decentralize some of our access to resources and public space. But I'm trying to jog you all into talking, right? I'm literally.
Reminds me of what the mayor said, that there's a whole lot of things on our menu that we probably need to prioritize as a board. Because I know I get asked about some things more than I get get asked about others, like the aquatic center and parking and the new connector road. I mean, it just seems like, that seems overwhelming when you say all that like that. But if you broke it down into to tiers or something like the mayor said, that would.
I'd like to have a nice dashboard is really what you're looking for of all the city activity. But I can't figure out what that looks like and how it can be updated efficiently and not become something that a whole nother staff person has to do. You know, you don't want that. You don't want it to be a full-time job. just-
Well, that goes.
But at the same time, it may be, I don't know.
That goes back to our IT people are hardware people. They're not necessarily software people. And when you get into IT, software development and management is very different from the hardware of, you know, the servers and things like that.
Well, they do, but our staff does both.
I know,
Yeah.
but those are two very different things
Right.
that most IT people cannot do both.
Right.
Or they do one really well and can kind of sort of do the other. So when we're talking about this is also when we need to think about, you know, is that going to fall to the community liaison person? But when we talk about IT, really what we're talking about is the hardware part of it. And that's very different from software.
Well, the grant writer idea is the same type approach. I mean, breaking it out rather than having somebody wear both of those hats. I mean, that's a
Right.
perfect example.
So we
Right.
probably need to break out the web from
Do you,
IT.
Yeah,
or
well,
it would
that's-
be, it would be a function of IT, but it needs to be a software person and not.
did the whole website landing page make sense fully?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and so that's got to be done, you know, through a community-wide organization. Like,
Right.
for example, now it's the EDP. So the EDP Marketing Committee needs to be the advisory board. It needs to be a contract with a third party doing all the work. And then all the other agencies feed it information at the request of that contractor.
Right. Which that's what that company is that.
Right.
They're a software person.
Right.
They're not going to.
And so that needs not be IT staff,
Right.
definitely. Yeah.
Right.
Right. No, there's no, yeah, right, I agree with that 110%. Like,
So
that's
we just need to
definitely,
make sure that everyone knows the difference.
yeah.
Well, and also,
I see that.
I think it's important that we have this dialogue with Nick, because I would guarantee you that in this conversation, Nick would refer to us that he has hired people in his department that can do a little bit of both of these things. The new person is gonna do the website, although it's not gonna be an employee of the city, but it's got to have effective communications with these guys to keep the thing going. So I think it's all in the same, I was saying the same thing, I think.
Hey, Earl, in all your spare time, you mind taking just a quick and dirty run at taking all these items and just kind of loosely grouping them? And maybe at our next commission meeting, we can just kind of see your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we try to do that a little bit just by the natural. So like some of it is by department and some of it is by that last page by theme.
And that's fine,
You
if
know,
you want
a
to do it
little
by
bit.
department?
So like you've got livability things and you've got downtown master plan, you've got economic development things, you've got staffing issues. You know, so this priority list of FY '23 is really an attempt at doing that a little bit into some of those categories. And so like if you all come up with some other ideas, I'll try to add to that. We'll try to do that as a management team. But and if we can come up with a different couple categories, we'll do that.
And to the mayor's point earlier, we have a population in the city of 17,000 and 30 in the county, but we service 150 plus, 150,000 plus that come through mostly our city limits and our county, and you know that's who, you know, those are the people that are having wrecks on the bypass. Not necessarily the 17,000 that live here. It's the 100 plus that are
Yeah.
coming through, and the fire truck has to go to that wreck, the EMS, the police, you know, that's how we have to function. We have to function and think like a city of 150,000 plus.
Yeah, we've talked about that a lot on the utility side when we were doing that. I
Right.
mean, you know, what we've talked about with plant staff, and Andy will tell you the same thing, everybody knows Andy. What we always, what he and I, the phrase we always, if you're gonna be a regional utility, you gotta think like it, right? And that's true for a city too. One of the things we've talked about doing, and we're actively trying to coordinate, is a meeting with our sister cities around us, Stanford, Springfield, Lebanon, Harrodsburg, Liberty. We want to bring everybody, Lancaster, we want to bring everybody together under one roof and all talk together.
Because those are the people that are coming here and working. They're coming here and spending money at our restaurants and stores and using our facilities. So those are the people that we're servicing. And yeah, I do like the idea of if we could, one more meeting, but if we could get together with them in a room with that other group of cities, that would be great. Because
Yeah,
I don't know if you've actually said this in a public meeting or not, but you've said, you know, if we draw a 20-mile radius around us, that does not include Lexington.
Doesn't include Nicholasville.
It does include Nicholasville. It's Harrodsburg, Springfield, not Liberty, Stanford, Lebanon.
25
Yeah.
miles captures Liberty,
Yeah.
right, Lancaster. So we need to have that meeting. I
And those
agree.
are the people that we're transferring back and forth. It's not necessarily Lexington. It's these people that are in the smaller cities around us that we need to form a relationship with and band together. And then that goes back to grants. You know, maybe we can't get something, but maybe in partnership with Stanford, we could get a grant for something and work together on that. I mean, I don't know how that works, but that's just throwing stuff out there.
I have another appointment I need to get to. I don't want to cut anybody off.
No, I think we're good.
Are we good?
Yeah, we're good.
If there's no further discussion, well, we have budget goals and objectives. Do we still need to do that?
Well, that was kind of all of those together,
Oh,
probably.
and my microphone.
Earl, on
You say something. Commissioner Hollins, you say something?
on the updated calendar, Earl, you've got, I think, 9 o'clock down for all those meetings on the updated calendar.
I think so, yeah.
And one of them is at 10 o'clock, the rest of them are at 9. They're all at 9, Ashley.
Oh, okay.
If there's no further, our chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second? No, you second?
Sure, second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. We are adjourned.